Introduction. You are lost in a dark forest, surrounded by gnarled trees that block out the sun and moon. The paths twist and turn and seem to lead nowhere. Strange creatures that both attract and frighten you lurk in the shadows. This is not just any wood. It is the dating forest. How do you survive? How do you find your way without a guide? The answer lies here. My last boyfriend had curly hair that formed little horns on his head, a neat beard, well-developed haunches, and small hoof-like feet. He was lusty in bed and graceful on a skateboard. He took softly lit nude photos of me, mostly of my rear end, to be precise. And whenever I asked how he was when I saw him, he gruffly whispered in his thick accent, "Better now." Once, he told me he had never felt as close to anyone as he did to me. But at the same time, he didn't like to be tied down, and he kept our relationship a secret for months. He still seemed quite attached to his young, beautiful ex-wife. When we broke up, he seduced his next girlfriend with the exact same tactics he had used on me. He took her photograph and even made her the requisite CD mix. I wondered whether he used the same songs. I watched him speaking softly to this new woman with his sexy accent, doing skateboard tricks to impress her, or standing quietly by while she leaped around in front of him, just as I had once done. I was devastated. What had I done wrong? How was I lacking? I couldn't figure out what had happened or how I had fit into the dynamics of the relationship. I felt that I didn't understand at all the man I'd spent a year with. So, I started dating, mostly on the internet. Where else these days? It was the first time in my life I had really dated. I had been married for 7 years, and before that had had only a few long-term relationships. All my past relationships had been chance encounters or introductions through friends. But these approaches felt too limited or random now. The internet seemed to offer a world of possibilities. But before I knew it, I had wandered into a dark thicket and lost my way. I was in a foreign, twisty, tangled forest without a map or a guidebook to help me understand all the new creatures that surrounded me. Which one was best suited for me? Who were they? For that matter, who was I, really? I was a loving, single mother of 2 young children, a published writer, a loyal friend, a shoe fetishist, a part-time yogi, wild dancer, and love obsessive. And now I was also a dater. But what kind? And what kind of male dater should I be looking for as my potential mate? At first, I tried to answer these questions by jumping into emotional and sexual relationships with too many people, and much too soon. I knew I needed some guidance, but what kind? When I was a little girl, my father told me Greek myths as bedtime stories, and my mother read fairy tales aloud. I loved to draw mythological creatures, fairies, mermaids, fauns chasing nymphs. As an adult, I wrote about them in my novels and short stories. Myths and fairy tales are a part of me, a part of how I think about the world. Why had I cut myself off from them when it came to such an important aspect of my emotional life? Dating. They had provided me with so much sustenance through the years, emotional and actual. Writing about them is how I make my living. So why not draw on them now, when I really needed them? I began to look at all my past relationships in this context. My ex-boyfriend was a satyr. The ex before that was a faun. I had had coffee with giants. I had never become close to a centaur. I had never even met a woodsman. But for the first time, I thought I might, because I was at least able to see and define him for what he was. As for myself, I thought about it for a while and determined that I was a wood nymph.